Hey, this is VK3SL, bidding listeners wide and north, thousands of people who are listening to this radio transmission on 160 metres or 2 metres or the audio stream, the thousands and thousands of non-listeners. Greetings to you all. This is VK3SL, test transmission, a regular Friday night event where we deliberately do not entertain anyone at all. It's strictly non-entertainment unless you're listening on the streaming service. We are transmitting on 1865 kilohertz and also it's in the AM mode and on 147.475 megahertz in the FM mode. So we are in typically disorganised mode tonight, which sort of makes things for a little bit more interesting as I get my squeaky chair up to the microphone. And we will move on from Mr. Murray's introduction to the Clico Club Eskimos and the music of Harry Reeser from guitar to banjo. We'll hear Beautiful Face, Have a Heart with Tom Stacks on vocal. And a slightly more suave arrangement from the Clico Club Eskimos with Harry Reeser. We're used to hearing them as the Six Jumping Jacks. They had many pseudonyms, the Hayseeds and the Jazz Pilots, lots of representations on different labels. That was on a Columbia. And yes, from 1928. I'm sort of, I equate the Harry Reeser's music with the Lightbeam the recording process, over processed and full of intermod and in your face Phil Spector sound. Well, I got one of those lined up a little bit later in the program actually, but let's keep the ball moving. I just pulled a random batch of records off the shelf, and lo and behold, there is a record I picked up when I was in grade 5 or 6 at primary school. We had a school camp, and all the kids all went to the, I think it was a camp on Phillip Island, and all of the kids went to the lottery shop and came back with bits and pieces, and I went to the second-hand shop and the junk shop and came back with a stack of 78s, which I carried on my knee. And amongst them was this recording made in 1927. It was actually recorded in Sydney in 1927. So, well, Zipper, I won't say anything else because I think the record speaks for itself. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadway Stream. VK3SL. Yes, that's Ballarat and it's home sweet home to me. A city built on gold, she gave her wealth untold. It made our land so great and grand, a land of liberty. VK3SL. Her name is enrolled on the scroll of history. So let your voices ring in praise of everything at Okay, we heard the 2FC Studio Dance Orchestra recorded in Sydney in 1927, home to Ballarat. Now, I think the vocal chorus on that record was supposed to be Len Maurice. Chris, you might be able to help me out with this one. Yes, Len Maurice, and I don't think he made it to the session. I think he had a car accident on the way to the session. I think maybe an apocryphal story, but apparently that's what I heard. And in the place, the record producer did the vocal chorus. Such is the story of Home to Ballarat. So a little bit of local history there. But I distinctly recall finding that record in a junk shop and carrying it on my lap on the bus on the way back from Phillip Island when I was in primary school. And I remember a few others in that pile. I think there was 11 more months and 10 more days, and with Leslie Cerrone and Mrs. B. That's right, a Billy Williams record was in that pile. You never forget. This is the thing. These recordings, these experiences become etched in your mind. All right, so this is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres. Broadway streaming service as well. You can find that on my QRZ page. Just look up my call sign and you'll find the link for you people listening on the stream tonight. What's next? I've got something else on the tip. I'll try it. Something in a minor key. Let's have a look. I can't even remember what it is. We'll just lean over. And, oh yes, something Depression's era record. Something nice and jolly to get us all in the mood to slash our wrists. No, this is from 1929, 1930. It's Crying Myself to Sleep. So we'll have a listen to this. I think it's sort of in a minor key. Might be dredging the bottom of the barrel here, but we'll give it a go. So let's get this fader up. They're getting very noisy, these faders. And we'll put the ident on. Whoa, that's sounding a bit ominous. Okay, let's try.
This is VK3SL, testing on 160 meters, 2 meters, and the broadwave streaming service.
Striking one, and I'm crying myself to sleep, wondering who's kissing you. I hear the clock striking two, and I'm crying myself to sleep. I try to close my eyes and make believe we've never been apart, and in my dream it seems you're calling me sweetheart. Just when you're kissing me, I hear the clock striking 3, and I'm crying myself to sleep.
Okay, just to put us all in a positive mood, that was Sam Lannon and Crying Myself to Sleep. Interesting how music from the Depression era has a distinct melancholy flavour to it. Now, I think we'll complement that with something a bit more upbeat, and yes, another Light Beam record, and it's sort of a little bit of a topical subject. So without any further ado, we'll have a message from our sponsors first, and we'll see what happens. Wait a minute, I've got to get this right. Yes.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here is a real surprise. One of Melbourne's leading bookmakers, Mr. Len Betts. How are you, Len?
Oh, not too bad, Mr. Stigel. How are you?
Well, very fine. I suppose you've got a good tip for the Melbourne Cup for us?
Yes, well, I can let you in a bit of a secret about that. I know of a good thing for next Saturday.
What it is?
Cigarette.
Cigarette?
A good thing, yeah,
oh,
cigarette.
That's bad luck. I haven't got enough tobacco.
Ooh.
horses, nutty over horses, 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 goofy over horses, 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 she's a little wild. Daffy over horses, 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 silly over horses, horses, horses. Once I heard her call me Sparkplug Brown Eyes too. Guess she thinks I'm a horse's Barney Google landing. Alter, 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 maybe she will falter, falter, falter. Then I'll get a halter, 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 just to make her mine. A woman's no means yes, I guess. A horse's neigh is a horse's yes. Oh, it's horses, horses, just a lot of horses, horses all of the time. Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
The loudness of the Six Jumping Jacks on an old Brunswick record. And that's an alternative take, I think, as I'm aware of another version of that same band with slightly different breaks, instrumental breaks. How about that? I didn't know. And, of course, that was the same band we heard before under a different alias. We heard them earlier on as the Calico Club Eskimos and playing a more of a mainstream arrangement. But in this instance, this is one of the novelty tunes, one of the many novelty tunes that the Six Jumping Jacks made in the mid to late 1920s. Pretty good stuff. And we preceded that with a little excerpt from it's a cassette sent to me by Mr. Fleming, and it's an acetate recorded. I think this is a recording that Chris procured, and it's a visit to Cyril Stevens' studio in 1943, and it's the Victorian Amateur Sydney Society introduced some of their members, and it's pretty the jokes are pretty bad. I was going to play a bit more, but I think I might select them a bit more judiciously. I haven't had a chance to listen to the rest of it, John, so we'll have to the other material on the cassette, so maybe we'll do that in due course, but it's been a busy week. All right, let's see, what's next? Shall we put another 78 on? Maybe something jazzy. Let's see. This is all very spontaneous, folks. Very little planning goes into these tests. I've got the Fats Waller from last week. Now, last week we heard Fats Waller's original E-flat blues, and on the other side is Swingadilla Street. That sounds like... And it's a Hammond organ solo by Fats Waller. Now, I was talking to Frank about the Hammond organ solos. Let's have a listen to this. So, I presume it's mid-30s. And which fader? I think it is this fader on this turntable. And I think the audience would like to hear less of this presenter. Hey, what a characterful performance that was. I haven't ever listened to that before. Mr. Waller on the Hammond organ with a instrumental combo backing him on a very quiet laminated Regal Zonophone record. Off the turntable. Hopefully I've resolved those RF issues. I've been doing that was last week actually. I made some improvements to the earthing arrangements. It seems to be a little bit better, so fingers crossed. Alright, next on the list is some Boswell sisters. We've been listening to a bit of them lately. And heard Connie Boswell do some solos the other week. It'd be good to come back to Connie, but I thought we'd just have a listen to the Boswell sisters. And a recording I hadn't heard until I did a little search earlier in the evening, and this one popped up, and I thought, wow, what a great number. So this is an education for me as well. Well, just get things organised, we'll have a listen to a recording I imagine it's from the early 30s. It's a track called Put That Sun Back in the Sky, and this is VK3SL. It's a test transmission on 160, 2 metres and the broadwave streaming service.
If you're happy blowing bubbles, you keep right on blowing bubbles, though the world may laugh at you. But if you find that blowing bubbles helps to chase away your troubles, that's just the thing for you to do. We've got to put the sun back in the sky, teach little bluebirds just how to fly. We'll start them winging and hear them singing, singing once again. We've got to put that smile back on each face pedal, good cheer every place. All you do is keep humming, 'cause spring is coming, coming to the lane. Oh, sing a little cool little tune. Oh, we've got to put the sun back in the sky, teach little bluebird just how to fly, to make an I love you song of each blue song just as the time goes by. Just keep right on smiling when trouble's knocking at your door. All you do is keep on smiling, your trouble's bound to go. Why you worry so? Oh, we've got to put that sun back in the sky. We've got to put that sun back in the sky. When we put that sun, when we put that sun, when we put that sun back in the sky. We've got to put that smile back on your face. We've got to put that smile back on your face. When we put that smile, when we put that smile, when we put that smile back on your face. Sing a little cool little tune. That's what we want under the moon. Gotta put that sun back in the sky. Gotta teach those bluebirds how to fly, to make an I love you song of each blue song just as the time goes by.
Hey, that is something amazing. I have to put that on again because I can't believe what I'm hearing. They are so perfectly matched. They are synchronous in the extreme, and they've got that wonderful New Orleans swagger. Connie features on that recording. This is, I want to have a little listen. Sorry about this, folks. You can switch off if you don't agree, but I need to hear that again. It's one I hadn't heard before, and it's a good transfer. It hasn't been over-processed. You don't see them often in Australia, these Brunswicks made by the Boswell sisters. But let's have a listen. It's Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra, by the way, but listen to those gear changes. They move from different different ambience, from upbeat to slower tempos, and they just do it seamlessly. It's just so well done. It defies description, really. So let's have another listen, and I'll just forget that there's a little preempt at the start, which I'll just fade out, and then now we can enjoy Dorsey Brothers Orchestra, actually.
If you're happy blowing bubbles, you keep right on blowing bubbles, though the world may laugh at you. But if you find that blowing bubbles helps to chase away your troubles, that's just the thing for you to do. We've got to put the sun back in the sky, teach little bluebirds just how to fly. We'll start them winging and hear them singing, singing once again. We've got to put that smile back on each bass pedal, put you in every place. All you do is keep humming, 'cause spring is coming, coming to the lane. Oh, sing a little croon, a little tune. Oh, we've got to put the sun back in the sky, teach the little bluebird just how to fly, to make an I love you song of each blue song just as the time goes by. Just keep right on smiling when trouble's knocking at your door. All you do is keep on smiling, your trouble's bound to go. Why you worry so? Oh, we've got to put that sun back in the sky. We've got to put that sun back in the sky. When we put that sun, when we put that sun, when we put that sun back in the sky. We've got to put that smile back on your face. We've got to put that smile back on your face. When we put that smile, when we put that smile, when we put that smile back on your face. Sing a little croon, a little tune. That's what we want under the moon. Gotta put that sun back in the sky. Gotta teach those bluebirds how to fly, to make an I love you song of each blue song just as the time goes by.
Well, there we go. That was the Boswell sisters, and a most extraordinary rendition of Put the Sun Back in the Sky. What tonal blend? I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like that, to be honest. I'm always astounded by their recordings. They made a lot, and that's one I'd never heard before until I had a brief listen earlier on. I thought I'll put that on the list. And now I've heard it twice in a row, and I could listen to it again, but I won't. Let's keep going. We'll have a listen to a hi-fi-ish recording. Shall I do that now, or listen to something first else? Oh, yeah. I've got another one of the Prozoot transfers, which is pretty much hi-fi. This is a Bluebird record from 1933, which sounds incredible. Now, you actually hear the drummer drop his drumstick. Well, I heard it when I was listening to this previewing this before. I don't know if that'll come out on air. It's about 30 seconds in, and you hear the ting of the drumstick hit the floor, and he picks it up and he continues. So it's all very, very spontaneous. Whoops, something's still going here. I have to turn that one off, that one Carl off, and turn this one on. And we'll have a listen to Ted Williams and the orchestra with Sitting Up and Waiting for You. So let's see if we can hear that drumstick for VK3SL testing.
High on the shelf, I'm all alone and blue. Always got me waiting, it's so aggravating, sitting up waiting for you. I'm growing thin, I feel all in, old rocking cherries do. And it's all from waiting, so humiliating, sitting up waiting for you. If I keep up these hours, I'll soon waste away. And I'll be getting flowers every decoration day. It ain't right, night after night, to do me like you do. Always got me waiting, it's so aggravating, sitting up waiting for you.
Okay, whoa, this is about to play again. That was Sitting Up Waiting for You, Ted Williams and his orchestra, and the vocal was Red Ingle, I think, on that. That was on the Bluebird label, which is a subsidiary of RCA, so I dare say that was recorded in the infamous, or the Bell Labs hi-fi studio in New York in instance in 1933. So that was pretty good. Did you hear the drumstick fall? Came across very clearly here, but may not on your transistor radio. Maybe if you had an AM3 and you lived 3 doors away. Another transcription, hi-fi transcription record from 1935. There's a big collection of them I've just stumbled upon online. Enough material to keep going for quite some time. They're not the most interesting recordings musically, but look, it is fascinating just to hear the quality of these. This is Richard Himbler, hi-fi transcription, What a Wonderful World, with Stuart Allen vocal. So we'll give this one a burl. This is VK3SL testing and enjoying high fidelity in the booth. What an experience.
a wonderful world. What a heavenly show, what a thrill and a glow. When I'm with you, it's a wonderful world. What a pleasure to live, to receive and to give. My heart is light and laughing and lyrical, like a bird winging. What a marvelous miracle has occurred, hear me singing. Oh, what a wonderful world, what a dream it can be, only if you love me.
The golden harp in the end. That was, whoa! I think this is on continuous replay. There was Larry Bradford's orchestra, yes, with Stuart Allen. Yes, on a wide range of Western Electric transcription records, one of those red transcription records, and they're good to hear because of the quality of the sound. Right, is it pianola time? Maybe it is. I will hopscotch over to the pianola. I've put on a roll without even previewing it, so I have no idea what this is going to be like. And we'll have a listen to one of these kitschy four-hand arrangements of, what's it called? California. Let me look at it. California. Yeah, Beautiful California. I have no idea. It's tempo's 75, so it might be a bit more balladish. So let's hope there's a bit of non-musical interest in this. All right, we'll switch on the other microphone and climb over the equipment, and let's see what happens. This is VK3SL testing. Okay, here we are on the SM57, that's what it is. Apparently has the same capsule as an SM7, so I'm told, but we're not supposed to know that. Okay, climbing over the chair, and we'll give this a pedal. Beautiful California. Move the tempo up a little bit. Whoa, something's wrong. Let's see if whoops. Oh, I think it's gone for a bit of a dial, so I'll pedal back and give this another try. We'll load it on again. Maybe it hasn't quite lined up here. Move that on. Take two, folks. Will it work? Is it worth it? We'll see. I'm going to get this around. Excuse the dead air. Let's see if this works. bit sudden. You got to really pedal on these things. Yes, the perforations are very small on that roll, and I have a feeling that's why it wasn't tracking so well. Anyhow, I feel like I've done my workout for the day. That was beautiful California. A very kitschy roll from the probably mid-1920s. We'll go back over to the other microphone. Okay, back on board. And I'm sort of glad I did that workout. Let's see, what's next on the agenda? What else can I offer what other boredom can I bestow upon the listener? Yes, actually, we'll have a listen to the other half of that special on 3KZ, that 21st birthday special from 1951. We listened to the first part of it last week, and it does continue for another 20-odd minutes or so. So sit back and have a listen to a bit of 3KZ history. So this is off SoundCloud, and we'll see how we go. We might fade it in because I was halfway through a tune, I think, last time. Anyhow, this is VK3SL test transmission, and we are having a listen to 3KZ in 1951.
White road, a road that never ends, a road that never ends.
Well, I know you have another date, Ken, but there's just two brief features of an old 1937 disc we found that you'll enjoy. One's a furniture advertisement by a voice you'll know.
Oh, by the way, when you're at Anderson's, ask them to show you that four-piece spare bedroom suite they're offering for £7.19 6. Believe me, you'll be surprised. It's a delightful suite. Now, Daniel Lieberfeld's off, please.
Well, Terry, dear. Yes, Terry is now director of Australia's Amateur Hour, and he's a little deeper today than he was in 1937.
You're telling me?
Oh, hello, Terry. Deeper and bigger all round, you might say.
Well, that's the pot calling the kettle, Ken. Let's have another shot at that commercial, eh?
Right, shoot.
Oh, and by the way, when you're at Anderson's, ask them to show you that four-piece spare bedroom suite they're offering for... Believe me, you'll be surprised. It's a delightful suite.
Seems to me the voice has gone down and the price has gone up in those intervening 14 years. True. Here's another announcement made that same day in 1937. Iris Greenham was our announcer at the time. I'm sure you'll both enjoy it, and I fancy the ladies will, too.
Is specializing in modern hairstyles at reasonable prices. You can have a modern permanent wave from as low as 9 6p, and a shampoo and setting is only 2 6. For information or appointment...
1937. Well, the years are marching on.
Prices are too, Ken.
Time is also, and I must away. Well, thanks very much, Terry dear and Ken Hudson, for dropping in at the old address tonight.
It's a pleasure, Eddie, and happy birthday, 3KZ.
That goes for me, too. Well, thanks a lot. I'll see you both out. 1937, the commencement of the big quiz era, all stemming from that simple spelling bee. Victory varieties, husbands and wives, stumbles, high jinks, and dozens of others. So passed 1937. So passed 1938. Where were you on the night of Sunday, September the 3rd, 1939? Well, me, I was minding my business at 9 p.m. and running a P&A parade. They started with a brass band in those days. Thank you, members of the Coburg City Band. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this network broadcast to hear an urgent message from the Prime Minister, Mr. R.G. Menzies.
It is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of a persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her and that, as a result, Australia is also at war. No harder task can fall to the lot of a democratic
The
leader.
world was at war.
All right, you whippets, get a move on and fall in lively. Come on. Company number. Take them. Now, my lad, we're moving into action. Don't look too happy about it. It ain't no picnic. Wipe those grins off your faces. Pigs, Bennett. Move the right in pause. Palm. Pose. Right. By the right. Quick. March.
But many Septembers were to pass before our washing did hang on the Siegfried line.
And in the long years between, dawns became dubious, days brought disquiet, nights nurtured nostalgia. Australia was at war. Even after the Prime Minister's dramatic announcement that Sunday night, the remaining parade competitors, despite their feelings, carried on with the show.
And all radio, now faced with new duties, new horizons, new responsibilities, had to carry on too. No mention of troop movements for the duration. No mention of movement of ships. No mention of the presence of ships. No mention of the movements of troops or the movements of aircraft. No radio station to make mention of weather conditions for the duration. No mention of rain. No mention of sunshine. No mention of wind direction.
Blimey, what can we talk about?
No mention of the movement of 3 cabinet members today. No mention of the presence of mines in Bass Strait. No mention of an explosion at an ordnance factory in New South Wales in the Area 7X.
And so 3KZ became one of the important metropolitan teeth in the smooth mesh of the Australian commercial stations. Over 100 different cogs now geared for war. Every word uttered was uttered with care. Authors of even the shortest advertisements signed their work. Every musical item was chosen and logged 14 days in advance. Even these war songs themselves. The morale of the community was never more important. The near ones and dear ones belonging to men away overseas looked to radio more than ever before. Munition workers on shifts of 12 throbbing hours needed entertainment more than ever before. With depleted staffs, it was the job of radio more than ever before to give them that entertainment, to maintain that morale. The shortwave era had commenced. The calm dignity of the British news broadcasts became a daily event. And by the early part of 1940, Winston Churchill had mobilized the English language for war.
Battle, nor the long-drawn trials of vigilance and exertion will wear us down. Give us the tools, and we will finish the job.
And then, do you remember the inspiration of this famous one?
Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty. So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
The great speeches of Churchill were interspersed with those from another direction, from another nation, another leader.
This 10th day of June, 1940, the hand that held the dagger has struck it into the back of its neighbor.
All the voices we heard weren't mature. 2 princesses aged 14 and 10 spoke to London's child bomb evacuees and to the Empire.
My sister is by my side, and we are both going to say good night to you. Come on, Margaret. Good night, children. Good night, and good luck to you all.
Then another infamous date in history. December the 7th, 1941.
No mention of Australian troops in Malay Peninsula. No mention of ships sunk in an air attack on Darwin. No mention of enemy aircraft over Townsville. No mention of enemy submarines in Sydney Harbour.
Coming home on leave. There's a girl wanting...
No mention of return of 9th Division. No mention of presence of United States military personnel in Australia. No mention of shedding of Sydney suburb.
The Americans came slowly at first, then in their thousands. Still no mention of their presence over radio. Not until United States headquarters moved to Brisbane were we able to broadcast The Boys. 3KZ's Aussies and Yanks quiz then became a highlight.
Camp shows were needed badly in those years also. With male artists in short supply, 3KZ organized a female professional show which broadcast weekly from camps near and distant. And with those camp audiences hungry for entertainment, remember Kay, feminine compere of Women in Uniform?
And nothing is better than butter for keeping the boyfriend that has a totty. Everybody says I'm old fashioned. Tick all the things that come rational. So pinch on the end and me plum and apple jam. So please leave my butter alone. Please leave my butter alone.
1942, 1943, 1944. 1945, VE Day. And then, in August...
London calling on VJ Day, Wednesday the 15th of August, 1945. Here is the news, read by Derek Prentice. The news of Japan's surrender has been followed by a broadcast by the Emperor, the first he's ever made.
Within an hour of the news, 3KZ's microphone was on a balcony of Manchester Unity Building, directly opposite the Town Hall balcony, directly above the spot where, 13 years before, Hayden Button's trophy and 75,000 3KZ votes stopped the crowd. Today, the crowd itself numbered 75,000, with different thousands happily struggling past every hour. Norman Banks' marathon broadcast that day, that night, next day, next night, combined energy, endurance, excitement.
My Lady Mary, first of all, do let me say to you how terribly thrilled and happy we are to have you here to say a word to Melbourne people today. It's grand of you to come across.
Thank you, Mr. Norman Banks. And people, I wish you could see, I wish you could feel as I feel when we look at these young people down here. It's just wonderful to the mothers who have their sons as I have, knowing that they are free and in a very short time we will have them back. Melbourne today is doing what we expected Melbourne to do.
Mrs. Beatrice Campbell spoke the first day. The crowd was still there the second night.
Drawn in. Anyway, here's the crowd singing Waltzing Matilda. Listen to this lot.
Before long, they were coming back, but they weren't all waltzing. Norman interviewed the first returning prisoners one night late in September.
Now, your name, please. Private White. J.P. Christian name. James Patrick. Where from, James? Beltana. Well, now say hello to the folks. Hello, Mother. How are you? I'm quite well. I've put on quite a lot of weight since I've been free.
Any girlfriend to send a message to, James?
No girlfriend to send a message to.
Where's the wall off from there?
After 6 years, the war was over for the world and for the empire.
God who made thee mighty, make thee mightier yet.
The end of the war meant that international travel resumed, allowing Norman Banks to recommence the Voice of the Voyager broadcasts, a regretted wartime casualty. The late Oscar Natska, whose voice we have just heard, spoke of his travels.
And it really is a great pleasure for me to be able to introduce that talented artist, New Zealand-born Oscar Natska. Very welcome to Melbourne indeed, Mr. Natska.
Thank you very much.
Now, in the past, although we've pronounced your name as Natska, it's always been spelled N-A-T-Z-K-E. What about that change?
Well, we had so many mispronunciations of my name with S-K-Y and S-K-I and L-O-C-H-K-Y that Mr. Harold Holt, my impresario in London, decided that the A would simplicate the whole thing.
30s, 40s, or 50s, 3KZ's effort for the Austin Hospital has remained constant. But the war years brought a flood of other appeals which required and received every possible support. The cessation of hostilities meant that much of this latter effort could be diverted to peacetime channels. Here is such an instance in December 1947, with the Lord Mayor of Melbourne at our microphone. He was then Councillor Raymond Connolly.
I needn't tell you how much the hospitals are in need of money. And it's gestures like this that I think that they're greatly appreciated, and I can assure you that the money will be very well spent, apart from the great enjoyment which you've already given. I'd like to congratulate all concerned, and I'd particularly like to congratulate the winner, Miss Patricia Howard. There's no doubt about it, Australia's getting some marvellous voices.
The late Sir Raymond Connolly was right about Patricia Howard, recently in the lead at Sadler's Wells. With all Melbourne, we were soon to mourn his passing.
1948, 1949, 1950, and this year of grace, 1951. Our Jubilee year, 3KZ's majority year.
And yet it too has seen the passing of several who elevated our radio, and some who elevated our public life. In January, 3KZ's listeners heard this voice for the last time.
When I pretend I'm gay, I never feel that way. When I hold back a tear to make a smile appear, good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to Painting the Clouds with Sunshine. Coming to you from the lovely Grace Auditorium, Broadway, Sydney. This is Jack Burgess with your 30-minute program of the old-time numbers we all enjoy. So join us and sing a chorus or two. If you can sing in the morning, you're right for the rest of the day.
Of one thing we can be certain. Jack Burgess painted many a cloud with sunshine.
And soon after, radio lost another friend. For 15 years, our Sunday afternoon community singing and our Heidelberg Hospital broadcasts brought you the voice of the finest person, one of the finest persons anyone could ever meet.
Fred Hesse Conch Party broadcast from the Heidelberg Military Hospital. And now we're going to sing This Is the Army, Mr. Jones. Now this is another you can let go, boys. Hold nothing back. This is the Army, Mr. Jones.
The mighty and the lowly attended the funeral of Will Sampson, a man with friends in every walk of life.
3 weeks later, on May the 27th, the first Field Marshal salute Australia had heard. Every Melbourne citizen, either watching or listening to a moving broadcast, mourned the passing of Sir Thomas Blamey. It reminded Norman Banks of another day, 11 years before, when from Port Melbourne Pier he watched the first contingent of Australians leave for overseas.
get the best you can do.
Blamey Boys. What a song. And those Blamey Boys have gone now. That ship is well clear of the pier. You can't pick one face from another.
Through the years, we find we haven't been fortunate enough to record every highlight we would have liked for the KZ story. But here's another one we did. It is a privilege to let Melbourne citizens hear it. May 27th was the date of Sir Thomas Blamey's funeral. Little did I know as I visited Heidelberg Hospital on Anzac Day, April 25th, he was to broadcast his last message. You will find it dramatic, prophetic.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is just a year since I spoke to you last on Anzac Day, and many changes have taken place in the world since then. We are celebrating today the departure of old remote to the First War. But that seems to be getting back into the old past distant period. But now we are beginning to look forward, and we are threatened again with war. This time, the shadow of communism, which was hanging just over our heads, has become something more defined and more definite. So much so that the whole of Europe and America, Great Britain, are preparing death that they could never.
Many of those same diplomats and national leaders who followed the cortege of Sir Thomas Blamey gathered in the New South Wales town of Bathurst just 3 weeks later.
May you rest in peace. O Lord, hear my prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray, O God, whom it belongeth always to show mercy and to spare. We humbly beseech thee for the soul of thy servant Joseph Benedict, whom thou hast called out of this world, that thou deliver him not into the hands of the enemy, nor forget him forever, but command that he be received by thy holy angels, taken to paradise.
Joseph Benedict Chifley. May we let you hear his voice again.
Before the war, Australia did not have a policy of her own for international affairs. We are not a voice, but an echo. The war in the Pacific demonstrated that it is vital for Australia to have a powerful voice in international affairs. The challenge was there and it had to be met.
And so 1951 has seen 4 funerals of our finest citizens. On such occasions, it is a little difficult to live up to that slogan of ours,
3KZ Melbourne, the Private Broadcasting Service. 3KZ birthday time is 5 minutes to 10.
3KZ's birthday, 21st birthday. We've been announcing Empire Day time on the 24th of May for many years. But today, having attained our own majority, we've announced birthday time for the first occasion.
21 years on the Victorian air. We all face the day, all of us here at 3KZ, with a sense of pride, yet with a sense of our responsibilities. Even as early as 6 o'clock this morning, Norman Swain, duly impressed with the seriousness of the occasion, greeted our listeners with an air of restrained dignity.
Hi, everybody. Well, 21 today, 21 today. We've got the key of your door, never been 21 before. Oh, I can get out of midnight, we were 21 today.
Seriously, however, 3KZ does appreciate the trust placed in us by the citizens of 200,000 homes. And we feel we have got the key of your doors. Perhaps the occasion calls for a word from our managing director, Mr. Sid Morgan.
As there is so much to be covered in this program tonight, and as time is the governing factor, my remarks will be necessarily brief. In catering for your radio entertainment over a period of 21 years, we have earnestly endeavoured to serve the majority by keeping abreast of times in every phase of broadcasting technique. It has always been our aim to play our part in the field of community service and to render full cooperation to our advertisers to make it possible for us to present most of our programs. With these objectives always before us,
we have made continuous progress, and I can assure you that our entire organisation will continue to give our best possible service throughout the years to come.
Mr. Morgan has mentioned the word service. That covers a multitude of things. Sacred music, for instance. It is presented not only on Sundays, but every day in the week.
Our sporting coverage is a wide one. One of our best-known programs in this field being Kyoto's Sports Parade each Friday at 8:15. Incidentally, you hear quite a deal of Douglas Elliott in this show. He is yet another KZ old boy.
Then, good music. That, too, is heard daily. A notable instance being the Maya Musicale each Monday night at 9.
There's just one other thing 3KZ's management would like to mention in the KZ story. That is our cordial relations with the other Melbourne commercial stations, our competitors.
We haven't got any competitors.
We have got our nuisances, of course. And we have many happy memories of some of the events that interstation cooperation brought about. As far back as 1934, there was an instance on October the 18th when all Melbourne's commercial stations, only 4 of them then, combined to describe the procession of the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester from Port Melbourne to Parliament House, their first visit. The names of the commentators on deck at the various strong posts that day in 1934 are fascinating today.
Port Melbourne Pier, Norman Banks. Swallow and Ariel's Port Melbourne,
Frank Jenkins.
Esplanade Hotel,
Fred Tapper.
Prince of Wales Hotel St Kilda,
Eddie Balmer.
St Kilda Junction,
John Stewart.
Capitol Theatre,
Jack O'Hagan.
Cromwell Building, Burke Street,
Harper Wilson.
Imperial Hotel, Spring Street,
Eric Welch.
Old announcers never die. They don't even fade away.
That interstation cooperation reached new levels through the war years. It continues today. We're proud of and happy with our associations with Melbourne's commercial radio stations.
It has been our aim in this, the KZ story, to present some of the things we would like to remember these last 21 years, and to describe the times we and our listeners have lived in.
We could look ahead. There's £1,500 to be given to Australian artists in Swallow's Parade tomorrow night at 9.
Then, of course, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, there is that annual event where 1 in 4 of Melbourne's million stops to praise a miracle at an annual event since 1938. Carols by Candlelight. Next day, Christmas Day, from 8 a.m. until midnight, 3KZ goes on the air with the Christmas Day appeal for the Austin Hospital and the blind babies. Greetings come from everywhere, all countries, for that long-established appeal.
A Merry Christmas to you all. This is Dick Bentley. Now, if anybody's still listening, I have a message for you all. So you, Mother, don't start chopping the wood till I've finished. And you, Father, take off that apron and leave the washing up until later. I'm usually introduced as your favorite funny man, but right now, in all sincerity, I want to be serious. I know that you're all looking forward to a happy Christmas season, but I'd just like to remind you that there are others who aren't quite so fortunate. For instance, how about the kiddies in hospital? After all, Christmas is the kids' own season, but lots of them won't have much to look forward to unless you are willing to share your happiness. Now, do you want to do something practical? Of course you do. Then here's how you do it. There's no better way than giving to the 3KZ Austin Hospital Appeal.
The Austin Hospital. As we say at the movies, this is where we came in, almost an hour ago. And that's the KZ story. It was written and produced by Eddie Balmer. Kevin O'Gorman handled the research from the listener-in files, the public library, and our own library of historic recordings. Our present-day announcing staff, together with several past 3KZ identities, took part.
Amongst the few unidentified were John Bohr, yet another KZ old boy, and Keith Eden as the voice of censorship. Your compere was John Ford. Our thanks to each one.
Well, that's about all. The 21st candle on our birthday cake is burning low. It wasn't easy to start the KZ story. It's no easier to finish it. So we'll conclude with a little of the bright music which has ever been to the forefront of 3KZ's policy and will continue so to be. On the occasions we have been and will be in your homes, thank you for having us.
It's been good to know you. What a long time since I've been home. And I gotta be drifting along. I gotta
And thank you, John Ford and the team at 3KZ 1951. Yes, old announcers certainly never die. Interesting one. It's a pity about the quality. It's been processed evidently, and the processing algorithm didn't take kindly to some of the imperfections on the record. So I always advocate raw transfers and then let the listener deal with things. But we're grateful to have that anyhow in our midst. So thanks to Radio Jamie for that upload on SoundCloud. But yay, good stuff. There's a lot more where that came from. There's about 200 there on this particular archive. So we'll find a few other things, but I'll look for things that are not over-processed, because it probably wasn't that legible in places. Yes, now, when I was listening to that, I had a brief sample of the cassette that was dropped in my letterbox this week by Mr. Fleming, who is listening, and he had some jingles from 3UZ, so we'll have a listen to one of those, and then we'll change gear.
Together, after we bring you the news and the weather.
Okay, what else is there?
When you set your dial on 3UZ, you'll be better with your dial on 3UZ. You're way ahead when you settle on 3UZ. Do-do-do, do-do-do. From 3UZ. So crunch that cereal, munch that toast. Here's the program you'll love the most. From the top of Burke Street, it's cheerily said. From 3UZ.
That's great. Well, there's evidently more where that came from, so we'll save them up for future missions. There we go. Thank you, John. That's great. Nice to have those at hand. I should dub them onto a cart. Yay. Well, let's see. What's next on the program? We sort of move into the classical sphere now, and they haven't got a lot of material, but I thought it'd be interesting to have a listen to some recordings made on the by the AG magnetophones in Berlin in the 1940s. Some astonishingly well-captured orchestral recordings, and one in particular has the sounds of artillery fire in the background, which makes it incredibly poignant when you think of the devastation levelled in Berlin. But we'll start with just an example from Bruckner's 8th Symphony. This is a short example, just to give an idea of the quality. This is recorded in 1944, and it features Herbert von Karajan and an excerpt from Bruckner's Symphony Number 8. So this is just a short excerpt from the last move. Now, it's interesting, there's a bit of a preamble here online that suggests that over 250 stereo recordings were made, but only 2 complete ones survived. So that's it may suggest the level of devastation, and tragic really that only 2 survive, and this isn't just a small example. Of course, we can't appreciate it in stereo, but if those interested, you can easily look these up online and experience them to their full capacity. So let's have a bit of a listen to a bit of Bruckner. And we'll just hear a short snapshot, but to have a listen to the fullness in this orchestral sound, it's fantastic. A wonderful recording too. Berlin Phil. Okay, that was a little example of music of Bruckner, played by the Berlin Staatsoper Orchestra with Herbert von Karajan, very early Karajan. In fact, he would have been in his 20s then. Bit of a enigmatic character, Mr. Karajan. He apparently joined the Nazi Party twice on the same day in different cities. Something that's not as well, when you think of his fame, and it certainly it raises questions about his ethics. But anyhow, it was a complex time. But look, I might put that on mainly for its technical quality, although there is a better version of that actually. But look, it's worth looking up. There is a recording of the whole last movement, the finale, from the Bruckner's 8th Symphony, and it's marvellous. And it's just such a shame that the rest of the recording is not extant. But it's really quite incredible stuff there. Now, the next one is even more remarkable in one sense, because it's from a live performance in Berlin, and it's a recording of Walter Gieseking playing the piano, and he's recording this is from Beethoven's 5th Piano Concerto. It's the Allegro, the last movement, and we'll have a listen to this. And it may not be evident in this format, but there is actually the sound of artillery fire. Very obviously, RAF were strafing Berlin at that time in 1944, and you can hear the bombs going off. Certainly you can with headphones on off the file, so you might just have to accept that that's in this performance. But look, it makes it such an actuality when you hear this, and in stereo it's even more poignant. And you get a sense of the immediacy and what a juxtaposition. Now, the most amazing thing about this is that Beethoven wrote this in 1809, and at that time, Napoleonic forces were strafing Vienna. So there was quite a bit of... he was in the midst of a war zone himself when he wrote this work, and it's incredible to think of music that's so beautiful being written under such turmoil. And here we hear it again in another theatre of war, in the most drastic circumstances, really. So very powerful if you can contemplate the full picture, what's going on here. I commend this to anyone. It's really worth listening to. It's the most extraordinary performance. Gieseking is a great pianist, and the orchestra is very committed, and it's wonderful. So have a listen. We'll give this a whirl, and it's just the last movement, and we'll if you can, it's about 2 or 3 minutes in. There's some the artillery fire sort of is on and off throughout, but there's a couple of bursts about 2 minutes in, about 5 minutes in, goes for 8 minutes. So let's have a listen. This is VK3SL. I'm testing on 162 meters and the audio stream. Let's have a listen to Mr. Beethoven. heard Walter Gieseking with the Arthur Rother and the Berliner Rundfunk Orchestra. Recorded 65, how many years ago? More than that. It was recorded 1944 in Berlin and in the middle of an air raid. And you can hear the anti-aircraft guns and the bombs going off. I could hear them very clearly then. Interesting listening in mono, it's even clearer. But stereo, you get the sort of the spatial effects, I suppose. It was recorded on an AEG Telefunken K7 stereo tape recorder, apparently. And it says here that the Soviets brought the complete RGG archive to Moscow in 1945, but most of the recordings were lost on the way. So, sadly, that's it's a tragic loss, really. I find that incredibly moving, the thought of that sort of circumstance. It's such a historical document, and it's a real testament against war, I suppose. There are some great sort of ambassadors of playing public concerts in the middle of air raids. I mean, Myra Hess was famous for her lunchtime concerts in the National Gallery in London, and when the bombs were going off, they'd go down into the basement, and she did that. She did over 1,000 concerts, I think. She just tirelessly performed during the war. There's a great interview with Myra Hess, and I listened to it in the car today on the way to work, and it would be great to feature her, make a whole program on Myra Hess. She's such an important figure. But I thought it might be good to just have a listen to just one of her performances, something very sort of quiet and reflective. And it is a wartime recording. It's recorded 1940, and at the time when she was giving all these concerts. And it's an interesting point of reflection, is her involvement in providing a sanctuary to people, I suppose, in the most dire circumstances. So let's have a listen to Myra Hess playing Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. And we heard Myra Hess playing Juicy Joy of Man's Desiring. It's a wartime performance. Myra Hess, of course, was famous for her National Gallery concerts in London during the war, and often performing during air raids. And what we might do now is have a listen to something of similar vein. This is, we go back to Berlin actually, and here the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra under the baton of Sergei Celibidache, and this is quite poignant too because it's actually recorded in the ruins. It's a film, and this is the orchestra playing in the ruins of the Philharmonic Hall in Berlin, which was bombed. It was destroyed, and it's just the shell remained, and they put a makeshift stage up, and they continued to give concerts there, and they filmed the orchestra in that ruin, and playing the Beethoven's Egmont Overture. So yeah, let's have a listen to this. It's very, very inspired playing, very powerful performance actually, and fascinating to see Celibidache in his youth. He's so young and athletic in this film. He's incredibly visceral and energetic, and his hair's flowing everywhere, and he's got wild gestures, and he certainly just brings out an incredible intensity out of the orchestra. It's quite remarkable. Later on in life, he sort of became a bit of a Zen master and a minimalist, and he virtually conducted with his eyebrows and virtually didn't move. It's fascinating to see him as a young man here. But look, the circumstance of this is also really powerful, just to see the auditorium in total ruin, but the orchestra still playing. So it says, I think there's a life message there. So we'll have a listen to the Egmont Overture, and we'll enjoy the music of Mr. B. This is VK3SL testing. Has a bit of a lead in this one. And we heard the Egmont Overture by Beethoven, played by the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra under the baton of Sergei Celibidache, a very young Celibidache in 1940-something, just after the war. Very powerful to see that performance in the ruins of the Philharmonic Hall in Berlin. There's some great screenshots of the setting, and the orchestra's just literally sitting amongst the rumble. And I think it was sort of made as a way to reflect on the transcendence of music, and particularly the Egmont Overture. That particular work was for an incidental music for a play from Beethoven's middle period, and it's about rising above adversity in a heroic stance, I suppose. Yeah, all right. Well, how to wind things up? I have two options here, and they're both looking at me. I don't know which to use. Last week we heard the Cavatina from Beethoven's 13th String Quartet, the Opus 130, and we heard it played as a part of the recording on the Voyager craft, the recording for eternity, I suppose. And I personally enjoy Furtwängler's transcription of the Cavatina for orchestra, and he orchestrated it, and it's probably a really fitting way to sort of wind up the show. So we'll have a listen to that. It's another wartime performance, I think. It might be a little bit after the war, but it's such a beautiful piece. And you might remember that in the middle there's this section where the Beethoven represents his own despair by having a series of quite sort of slow, or just pulses, quaver pulses, upon which there's a detached theme. There's a theme that has no allegiance to the agogic points and the beats. It's sort of written all off the beat, and it's incredible statement, and it's really it's syncopation in the extreme, really, and it's very, very sensitively captured in this performance. That middle section, you really sense his isolation, I suppose, and this being one of the latest things that Beethoven wrote. And it's interesting to contrast this being an orchestral transcription, but it is interesting to contrast to what we've just heard, which was written about 10 years earlier. So yeah, we'll wind up with this. I'll come back on Channel D and I'll have a listen afterwards. So we'll hear Furtwängler conducting the Cavatina from Beethoven's 13th String Quartet, and I'm VK3SL, and I'm wishing everyone a good week. All the best.